Hey guys, Captain Rick Murphy here. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Captain Rick Murphy YouTube channel. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Tell all your friends because we're gonna really do our best to teach you to become a much better fisherman with all the variety of different ways to fish for whatever species we're talking about. Now this week, guys, we're gonna be talking about redfish. Now understand, if you're artificial fishing or you're fishing with bait, that redfish is a very aggressive fish, but he's not like a snook in the fact, or a trout, where he actually sees as well. Those dudes, trout and snook, they can really see well. They're very fin fish oriented. But that redfish, because of his mouth being underslung, he's that dude that really likes to feed on things that are on the bottom. He likes to pin things to the bottom. So keep that in mind as we go through this video here. But more importantly, you know, you can catch them on topwater plugs. They like the same. The good part about buying a Jaywalker 120 or a Jaywalker 100, you can use it for your snook. You can use it for trout. You can use it for redfish. You can use it for tarpon. It's going to catch a lot of everything. So I like it because it's a walk the dog style of bait. It has lots of noise. It's, you know, rattles. It makes all kinds of good stuff. The other thing that you know is they eat suspending baits, as well as one of my favorite ways to catch them is with a spoon. We'll get into that in a second. But here's what I want you to know. You got to keep in mind that redfish, when it's cold weather, cold water, that typically shuts down that snook bite. It slows down the trout in shallow water as well. But guess what it does for redfish? It turns them on like nobody's business. Now, how are we going to catch them? Well, certainly during the cold months, you got to match the hatch. You're not going to want to fish something that looks like a pilchard. You're not going to want to fish something that looks like a mullet, because the mullet aren't swimming by when it's cold. The pilchards aren't easily accessible when it's cold. So you're going to fish on the bottom when we're going to fish with a shrimp. So you can go to your local tackle store. You can get a bucket of shrimp. Here's how you're going to hook it. You want to take a jig head, just like this one. Now remember, when you go to the store, guys, and you buy jig heads, what I want you to look for is, I want you to look for something that has a very good barb. And the reason why is, a lot of jig heads these days are built for fishing soft plastics, and they have a very small barb. The bad news about that is, a lot of times you'll make your cast, and when the bait hits the water in the way we're going to rig it, the bait will fall off because there's no barb to hold the shrimp onto the hook. You can buy these jig heads with bait keepers, and that'll allow you to use it for your artificials like a bass assassin, or you can use it for a live shrimp. Now on this live shrimp, there's going to be a spot underneath his throat, and it's a little black spot. That's his mouth. It looks like a little tobacco stain, so look for that. And what we're going to want to do is, we're going to want to take this hook, we're going to want to go right into that tobacco stain and push the point of the hook all the way out of the carapace, or the top of his head, so that he can swim like this. Now, a lot of old school dudes would call this a troll right. And the reason why we would refer to it as a troll right is because in a current situation, in a pass, in an inlet, in a place where there's a lot of current flowing by, this is going to allow that shrimp to swim correct. It allows it to be trolled into the current so that it's not spinning. It's not going around in circles. If you take and hook this shrimp in the tail, what happens is his tail itself acts like a rudder, and it'll spin in the current, and then you're not going to ever get a bite. And you're going to wonder, oh, Captain Rick, why am I not catching them? Remember, I didn't teach you to tail hook them. I don't like tail hooking the shrimp at all. What I like to do is hook him in that mouth, pull it out the top of his skull, and it'll look like this. And this will swim perfectly, guys, in the current. You can throw it across the current if you're anchored or your power pulled down, and then just let it sweep. And when you feel it stop, just lift the rod tip. And when you lift the rod tip, it's going to lift it up off of the sand or out of a little rock crevice that it's in, and it's going to continue to bounce down current. So keep that in mind. Fish 90 degrees to the current and let the current take your jig and your shrimp down current instead of fishing just straight behind the boat. When you get straight behind the boat, now you can bounce it back to the boat. That way you're fishing 90 degrees. If you're in the middle of an inlet or in the middle of a canal or a creek, or maybe somebody's channel at, around docks, you can also, if you're anchored in the middle or if you're power pulled down in the middle, one guy can fish to the right of the boat, and the other guy can fish to the left of the boat, casting 90 degrees and letting this thing bounce down current. Now you're fishing 180 degrees of the boat. Very, very effective way to fish anytime you can. The other thing that comes to mind is if you're up on the flats, you can certainly rig this so that it's weedless, where you're casting to the redfish. You're casting into potholes where they live. This is a little eagle claw. It's called a Pro V worm hook, but man, it's so sticky and works so well. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use my fingers to mark where I want it to come out. We're going to push down that point, and we're going to push it into this area where I've got my fingers and pop it out the top. It's really important, guys, that when you do this, that the shrimp has to be straight. If it's curled, if your plastic is curled, it's going to spin, and that's not going to be effective. It's not going to work well. Certainly, you can rig these shrimps using a jig head. If you're fishing it artificially like this gulp, the way you'd want to do it is just slide it up on the barbs, slide it in around the corner of the hook, push it up there. Don't be shy. Get a good bite, and then pop it out, and then push it all the way up on the keepers. Now, this can be thrown into your potholes. It can be bounced on the bottom. Remember, anytime you're fishing a jig, guys, one, you want to tie it on with a loop knot. And the reason why is when it hits the water and you're up here on the surface, it's going to sink faster because it can rotate across the top of the loop. If you tie it straight to the hook and you cinch it down, then what it's going to do is it's going to sink like this. And it's not going to sink as fast, and it's not going to be as effective. Another thing that I really like doing when I'm fishing in places where I can't see the fish. Maybe I'm fishing over on the West Coast in Chokoloskee, or I'm fishing in Everglades National Park, Biscayne Bay. It's a little bit tannic. I love putting the old-fashioned popping cork on my line. And the way I do that, the reason why I do that is so many times we pop the cork very aggressively. Make sure you make a big bubble splash when you do this, because that's what is going to attract the redfish. It's going to attract any other predators that are in the area. And when you pop this, what this does is it brings this shrimp up off the bottom, and then it starts to sink again. So he's actually coming to the noise of the popping cork, but he actually sees this thing coming up from underneath him and falling. The other thing that's so perfect about a popping cork is that you can adjust the depth. If you go to a place where it's only 2 feet deep, then we can fish it real shallow. Or if we go to a place that's 6 feet deep, then we can actually slide the cork up, and that'll allow you to have a lot more versatility in what you're fishing. Guys, remember, leader is very important. I like throwing 30-pound or 20-pound to the redfish because sometimes they can be leader shy. This Berkeley Chrome fluorocarbon works very, very well for me. Whether, if you're in dirty water and muddy water, you can certainly throw, go to a lot smaller or a lot heavier leader. So keep that in mind as well. Now, one other little thing I want to add, one of my favorite lures is a search lure. A gold spoon, let me grab one here. Gold spoon is a very, very effective way. I've probably won more money fishing gold spoons around the country because, again, it's a search lure. The war pig, another great lure because it vibrates, it makes a lot of noise, and it has a great little action. So something that when you're fishing in dirty water and you want to find out if there's any fish there, this would be something that I would pick up. The war pig is a great choice because we can throw it as far as we can throw it, and you just simply reel it back. The same thing applies with a spoon. 1/2 ounce, 1/4 ounce, those are the sizes that I would recommend you try. I'll give you a little trick. When we get out of the box, this is how the weed guard comes. Don't like that. I'm going to pull this weed guard up like this, then I'm going to bend the weed guard slightly like that so that when The redfish comes up and bites it. It mashes the weed guard down like that, and it doesn't poke him in the throat, and he eats down really hard on the spoon. Plus, if we hit a wood or we hit an oyster bar, it pushes the hook away, and this will actually help us become a lot more effective and weedless. Keep those things in mind, guys. If you have any questions, you can always email me anytime. You can go to Sportsman's Adventures and send an email to me. Appreciate you watching the Captain Rick Murphy YouTube channel. Don't forget to tell your friends to subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.